Recording.
Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriritam Kalmashapaham Sravanamangalam Srimadaatatam Bhuvi Grananti Ye Bhurida Jana. The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna with the devotees at Dakshineshwar. Master, Keshav Sen also asked that question. I said to him, if I explain that to you, then you won't be able to keep your society together. So in this context, what was the thing which actually was discussed? That is a Paramahansa aware of virtue and vice? That was the question a tantric devotee asked. So in that context, the master is saying that Keshav Sen also asked that question. I said to him, if I explain that to you, then you won't be able to keep your society together. In that case, we had better stop here, said Keshav. Do you know the significance of virtue and vice? A Paramahansa sees that it is God who gives us evil tendencies as well as good tendencies. Haven't you noticed that there are both sweet and bitter fruits? Some fruits give sweet fruit and some bitter or sour. God has made the mango tree which yields sweet fruit and also the hawk plum which yields sour fruit. So here, this is an idea very, very unique to the Sanatana Dharma, to the Hindu tradition. So here, in all the Abrahamic religion, the idea is God is all good, merciful. He is the source of all justice. So here we find Sri Ramakrishna, as per our Hindu tradition, what is saying? That both originates from him, the virtue and the vice. The Paramahansa sees that it is God who gives us evil tendencies as well as the good tendencies. Haven't you noticed that there are both sweet and bitter fruits? Some trees give sweet fruit and some bitter or sour. God has made the mango tree which yields sweet fruit and also the hawk plum which yields sour fruit. So what's the basic idea? That it's the self, the Satchidananda Swarupa, which is the innermost core of each and every being, that is trying to find expression through our psychophysical existence. As we indicated again and again, that whatever we do in this life, our ultimate goal is to attain happiness. Whatever we are doing, that no one wants sorrow, no one wants to be dejected, everyone wants happiness. Now, because of this ignorance again cannot be defined, that how it has happened we don't know. That when we are bound in this psychophysical existence, we find something within is trying to manifest. What is that manifestation? That Sat Chid Ananda Swarupa, that wants to manifest always to all our activities. In this life, you will find that whenever we get any happiness, this is the idea which we again and again, that what's the source of vice? That God has given both the virtue and vice. If we try to understand what's the source of that, what's the virtue and what's the vice? Basically, everyone wants to be happy. Why? Because that's the core of our being. But because of ignorance, we think that happiness is something outside. And we are in constant chase of that happiness. But we never understand it is actually coming from within. That example of Swamiji, which we give again and again, that's our mind is just like a lake, is like a reservoir. And the bottom of the reservoir is our real nature. The Satchidananda Swarupa is the bottom of the lake. So when that lake is like the mind, and all the waves are like the thoughts, all the thoughts are like the waves. So as we find that when the reservoir the water is agitated, there's a lot of waves. I cannot see the bottom. To see the bottom, the water should be calm. Similarly, we are not aware of our Ananda Swarupata because of all the turmoils which are going on in the mind. When we have intense desire, any intense desire, what happens? We try to fulfill that desire. As long as the desire is not fulfilled, my mind is agitated. That huge waves in the form of the desire is there in the mind. I want this, I want this. And when the object of desire is attained, for the time being, the mind becomes calm. There is a let go. All the waves subdues. And I feel terribly happy. That's how we all feel happiness. When the desire is fulfilled, we feel happy. Because of ignorance, I think the object of the desire has given me happiness. But what has actually happened? That for the time being, there was a let go. The mind has become calm. The moment I attained that object, and it is the happiness which is within, which is my real nature, that percolates through the body-mind senses to give me a sense of happiness. It is coming from within. But because of ignorance, I am constantly being deluded that happiness is coming from outside. Now, this is a basic thing. Now, in our endeavor to attain happiness, all are trying. A thief is stealing so that his intense desire is to get the object which he wants to steal. The moment he steals, he gets happiness. Why? The same thing. That intense desire has been fulfilled. The mind is for the time being calm, and the happiness comes from within. But why I call it evil? What is evil? Because everyone, as we told, everyone is trying to realize that inner happiness, knowingly or unknowingly, when I'm doing it out of ignorance. And then what happens? That I am adopting certain means which won't allow me to continue with that happiness. Because what is this Veshti Vasana? There are two types of desires. One is the desire which has to do with the individuality, and the desire which has to do with the common good, Samashti. So Veshti Vasana, Samashti Vasana. So whenever the Veshti Vasana overrules the Samashti Vasana, the welfare of all. So the law of this society is what? That we won't allow it. You have to curb it. As we told many times, that it's just like passing through the traffic. I always want to go to the destination as early as possible, but taking care of the collective goodness. There is something called the traffic lights. That sometimes I do get the green, sometimes I do get the red. And I have to follow that. This Vyashti Vasana, my individual desire cannot overrule the collective goodness, the collective welfare of all. I cannot overrule. If I do that, that is considered as and something wrong, something evil. And for that, the system of the society is that we will be punished. And I'm calling it evil. Why? Because to get that happiness is good, but I'm adopted such a means for which I cannot continue with that. The society won't allow me. They will put me in jail. They will give this, what is it, they will fine this. You will fine you. They will, in some way, restrict you from what you are trying to do, because you are overruling the collective goodness. Now you see if you just try to find what is the evil. Evil is nothing. That whenever our individual desire is trying to override the collective goodness, that is evil. And whenever I am conforming, my individual desire is conforming to the collective, I give importance to that. That is good. That's why in a single sentence, the virtue and vice has been defined in Sanskrit. What? Paropakara punyaya papaya parapiranam. So why it is pap? That happiness which I am getting, it comes from God and God alone. This is the uniqueness of this idea, this Vedantic idea. The world doesn't have the capacity to give me any happiness. Even the thief by stealing, all the criminals by doing the crime, if he gets happiness after that, that comes from God. It's a very bold statement. It comes from God. But I have adopted a means which won't allow me to continue with that happiness, because I have adopted such a mean where my individual desire is overruling the collective desire. What is good? Where I have adopted certain means to get happiness which in no way disturbs other. Sometimes we find actually it is serving other. Just say any of the sattvic characters. Just say when I am cooking food, this cooking food is called sattvic. Why? So that by cooking, when you are cooking the food, your mind is fully engaged, focused on what you are doing. It enters into a state of placidity, calmness, and that gives happiness. And that happiness is in no way obstructing others' happiness. Actually, you are serving others. What you cook, it is shared by others. Gardening, dairy farm. If you read our scriptures, these are all called means those who look after the Goshala. This is sattvic job, sattvic work, because your desires are in no way overruling the collective goodness. You have developed some knack for some skills for some instrumental music. Sattvic. Meditation. Sattvic, because it's not in any way disturbing others. You are calming down your mind, and that in no way is at the cost of any other's welfare. And you can continue in that state, because it's something which speaks of a state of flow. Like when I am having, with my right means, I have earned something, and with that I go to some restaurant, I buy food, I relish. That's in no way I am overruling the collective goodness, because I have earned the money in a very noble way, I am enjoying. But still, it's not a very high form of happiness. Why? Once I am satiated, my happiness is over. Again that craving will come back. So I cannot consider. So what happens? Once I am satiated, my happiness is gone after some time. But if I have developed the happiness while meditating, or playing instrumental music, or studying, you will find you can continue with it for hours without any obstruction. So these are all higher forms. That's why they are called virtues. They are higher forms of happiness. What is happening? The same happiness. It is coming from the God and God alone. But you have adopted such a means where it is not obstructed. And these are all virtues. But from where it is coming? From God. So He is the source from which both the virtue and the vice has originated. Both from Him. So that's why we find in Swami Vivekananda's lecture, he is saying very nicely that good and bad are not qualitatively different. These are not two different things. It is just the difference in manifestation. The evil is very small manifestation of the divine. Just for a thief steals a thing, he is very happy, and the next moment he gets caught, he is in the jail. Just for a fraction he got that happiness and it's gone. So the manifestation was very less. And the one who is meditating on God for hours, there is no factor to hinder him. His manifestation of happiness is more and more. So that's virtue. So it is qualitatively not different. The same quality. It's the same happiness, ananda swarupata of the divine. In both the cases is finding expression. So qualitatively, as for the quality, they are same. Where the difference is in the manifestation. So the virtue and vice, the difference is in the gradation of the way they are manifesting. Not as per the quality is concerned, they are both same. So this is a wonderful idea we find in this Vedantic tradition. So that's why this both tendencies we find is coming from God and God alone. The happiness within is trying to manifest. Because of ignorance, we don't know the source. We are in search outside. But actually, when we get happiness, it's coming from within. And if I can have that happiness unobstructed, know it for certain, it is a virtue. If it is getting obstructed, it is vice. So this, we can say, is the way in Vedanta they approach the idea of virtue and vice. So both the source is God. Tantric, yes sir, that is true. On the hilltop one sees extensive rose gardens reaching as far as the eye can see. Master, the Paramahansa realizes that all this good and bad, virtue and vice, real and unreal, are only the glories of God's Maya. This is the glory, means as we will, this vibhuti, there's exactly the vibhuti. So that's what we were saying, it's a manifestation. They are the glories of God's Maya. But these are very deep thoughts. One realizing this cannot keep an organization together or anything like that. So, this all isms are a proof to this fact. That what happens why we cannot keep the organisms together? Because whenever we are forming an organism, any organization, whenever we are forming any organization, what's the idea? There is something evil outside. We have certain isms, certain ideologies, which I believe can get rid of all the evils of the world. That's what is the idea behind all the organization. But we will find that Sri Ramakrishna very nicely have said that this world is just like a dog's curly tail. It can never get straightened. However we may try, it can never get straightened. Even the Swami Vivekananda in his lectures also is indicating the same thing when he is saying that the world is just like a rheumatic patient. Those who have a rheumatic these pains, most probably they have the pain in the knees. You massage, that the pain just shifts. It goes to the ankle, or it may go somewhere else. It may go to the hip joint. It just shifts. But you cannot get rid of it. So the evil, the nature changes, nothing else. Everywhere, in society you will find that any reformation we are trying, at last, with all our ideas of reformation, we will find that evil is finding expression in some other way. You cannot get rid of it. You cannot get rid of it. In the present world of turmoil, that now, just immediately the thing which comes to my mind, this immigration, now it's a big issue. Just yesterday or 2 days back, there was this mass rally, anti-immigration. We forget for the development of this nation at some time the government had to adopt the policy of migration. And that thinking that this is going to do good to the nation. And what is the reason? That entire thing is a very complicated issue. But whatever, when anti-immigration, this huge rally is there. The same thing which was adopted to really think of the nation's, this development, now many are feeling that has become the cause of all the complexities which we are finding in the society. So we are not going into the details, but what's the idea? You find that always the same thing. That it was the same idea of globalization just few decades back. Throughout the world, there was a huge the craze for this globalization, and in every country now you will find the idea of this fundamentalism is again growing strong. That my nation first. Before this globalization, there was colonialization. So what's this? We are adopting one after other so many ideologies, thinking with this we are going to change the world. But in the words of Swami, it's just like a rheumatic patient. You can never solve the problem. It will just go on changing its nature. Somewhere I read about this communism. That was the idea that we need, that there shouldn't be any exploitation. All the entire society, all the people should be treated equally. There shouldn't be any exploitation. But with all the class struggles, at last what we find, very nice example was given. That before the revolution, it was the landlord sitting on the back of the horse with a whip in his hand. The laborer was standing on the ground and he was whipping the laborer. After the liberation, just the roles changed. The laborer is sitting on the top of the horse, the landlord is sitting on the ground, and now the laborer is whipping the landlord. You can relate. You can relate it with all the movements. We are not saying which is right or wrong. It's a fact, just a statement of fact. With all the revolutions, with all your organizations, at last you find the nature of the evil is just changing. But as such, the evil cannot be eradicated. So this is the way of the world. The good, evil, there's a balance of it. It can never be all good. If anyone, and why we become fanatic? Because with my ideology, which I thought is perfect, with that we formed an organization. And when I try to implement in the society, thinking of reforming it, and I find that the reformation is not happening. And then I start searching what's the reason. And then I go on attributing the reason of this failure to this external so many factors. And with that, all the fanaticism, anger, rage, everything is developing. But we forget the basic thing, that as such, there cannot be any change in this world. This will go on. As we say again and again, this world is perfectly imperfect. God has made it such. Why? We don't know. The first basic reason is ignorance. We don't know. It is as it is. We cannot simply say it is all good. It is just closing our eyes to the fact that goodness and evil is everything, is a mixture. It is always there. Only thing we can say that in a way it's good. If it was not so, if really we could make this world perfect, then there was no need for us for any religion, any spirituality. There was no need. This world would have been converted into heaven. We know it is not. And that makes us turn towards the divine. So, from this Paramahansa standpoint, what Ramakrishna is saying is interesting. From this standpoint, there cannot be any organization. Because all the organization has that idea, basic idea, that we with certain ideology is going to get rid of all the evil. But a Paramahansa, who is a Paramahansa? He knows, after all, this world is a mere projection. It is a futile attempt to try to, make it perfect. After all, it is not our destination. It is not something where we are going to stay eternally. It is just a flow. A Paramahansa is Paramahansa. What the word Paramahansa means? It came from that mythological swan, to which if you mix milk and water and give it to drink, it will drink only the milk and leave out the water. So that is the Paramahansa, the great swan, who can always take the essence and leave out the thing which is dross, which is of no use. So here, what is the essence? That apparently what all these things we see in this world as good and evil, they are mere projections. They are the dross. The sara, the essence is the divine, who is behind that, who transcends that. As we were saying, that because of ignorance, when that happiness we are trying to express, and it is expressed in a way that happiness is obstructed, that is evil. And what is good, when that happiness is not obstructed, that is good. Say, Paramahansa knows very well that it is the Ananda Swarupa, that because of ignorance is trying to find expression through the psychophysical existence, creating all this panorama of good and evil. But the goodness is beyond that. And if it is that, all our attempt to find only goodness in this world by getting rid of all the evils, which is the basic idea behind organization, is a futile attempt. It can never happen. So a Paramahansa can never think of an organization. So that's the idea. The Paramahansa realizes that all this good and bad, virtue and vice, real and unreal, are only the glories of God's Maya. But these are very deep thoughts. One realizing this cannot keep an organization together or anything like that. So it's almost impossible for him. So the Master Tantric, but the law of karma exists, doesn't it, Master? Yes, that also is true. Good produces good and bad produces bad. Don't you get the hot taste if you eat chilies? But these are all God's Leela, His play. So some very subtle we find the conversation is going on. It's really sometimes very difficult to get the real idea of what is being spoken of here. We are just trying our best to find some idea with our limited this scope of understanding. That it's this good produces good. Yes, the law of karma is there. That everything behind good and evil, God is there. So naturally we may feel that idea that if it's so, then why should we be bothered about all our actions? It's happening with the will of God. So now he's saying, but karma phala is there. For the good will, whatever good actions will lead to goodness, evil will lead to evil. That's the law of nature. That we say in a way in our tradition, you will find these vachakas are used to indicate the reality, the absolute reality which is beyond all the phenomenon, which transcends the phenomenon, is being indicated as Om. The most undistorted, the reality which has not been distorted into the name and form, is beyond all this. There is the Om. That absolute reality finds expression as energy. This universe is nothing but Shakti. The Vachaka of Shakti is Rim. But very interesting, that Shakti, which is the manifestation of that absolute, when it manifests as Shakti, it manifests always following certain laws, rhythm. In Sanskrit that is called rhythm, that the laws governing the universe is rhythm. Just see the English word rhythm so near to it. Actually this word came from rhythm only. Etymologically, these Sanskrit words, from which you will find that there's so many languages that you can get the etymological root there in Sanskrit. Rhythm has came from rhythm. It speaks of what? When that absolute reality finds expression as this universe, it always finds expression as laws. No one can break that law. So just as we say that if I say I don't believe in gravitation, it's a physical law. Am I going to fly if I jump from a 20-story building? No. I will fall down, crash and die. It will be fatal. Similarly, all the moral laws. What are the moral laws? Just now we were discussing. Wherever all the laws are based on what? That my individual desires should be controlled, regulated by the collective desire. When it is overruled, that is evil. So this is the basic law. No one can break that law. If I try to break that law, at last if law is broken, then it's not a law. Law can never be broken. In our attempt to break law, we break ourselves. Just the man who tries to break the law of gravitation by denying it and jumping out of a 20-story building thinking he will fly, he breaks himself. Here also we will find we break ourselves. Law cannot be broken. And that's the rhythm which Sri Ramakrishna is speaking of. It is true that good produces good, bad produces bad. And then that thing he says very interesting. Don't you get the hot taste if you eat chilies? What he's saying? The chili is kept in a plate. When you are having your food, in a separate plate some chilies are kept. Whether I take a chili and have my food along with it or not, that's my choice. But if I have the chili, can I just say that I want to enjoy the flavor of the chili but I don't want its hotness? It can never happen. If I take it, I will have to have that hotness. That sensation of hotness is something which I have to experience. If I don't take, well and good, I don't experience that. So that is fixed. I can never break that. So good produces good, evil produces evil. No, we can never break that. So just you see, actually what Sri Ramakrishna is speaking, it do make sense if we really try to reflect on it. There's good, evil. What is the good? What is the evil? And how it is all bound by the laws. The good will produce the good, evil will produce the evil. But at the same time, it is the God who is the source of all this. So in a very nice way we find that this idea, Sri Ramakrishna through his conversation is trying to bring home to this when Tantric is asking. And then what is the way for us? We shall have to reap the result of our past karma. Shall we not? Master, that may be so. But it is different with the devotees of God. When a man merges himself in God, he can no longer retain wicked or sinful tendencies. So, we have to reap the result of our actions. That's true. But here what Sri Ramakrishna, but for a devotee, what is a devotee of God? The one whose ego has been sublimated. How? That for us, for the one who has no awareness of the divine, all his actions are originating from the ego. That example which we gave, that our personality is like a will, where the hub of the will is the ego, and all our innumerable desires are like the spikes. This is all the spikes. If one spike is broken, still the will is intact, because there are other spikes fixed to the hub that will keep the will intact. But if hub is removed, the entire will collapse. So when Sri Ramakrishna is saying what? That as per our actions, we have developed some tendencies, the desires, the samskaras, that will lead us to various type of action, and that way the good tendencies will result in good result, evil tendencies will result in evil result, and this will go on. But when I become a devotee of God, what's the idea? The real devotee? There are two types of devotee. One is that who take the God as the means, world as the end. That's not the real devotee. That I pray to God so that I can get worldly benefits. It's actually a type of materialism, though it's a bit higher than this rank materialism, because here you have somehow the faith in God, the spiritual dimension of your existence, your faith, you have developed. But it's still very gross. Why? After all, this world is the be all and end all of my existence. God is just the means. My desires are in no way taken care of. I am not getting rid of them. I am just nurturing them, where God is the means to nurture them. So my personality remains intact. But a real devotee is what? Who? For whom God is the only end. So what's the idea? That for a devotee, I am, God is. God is eternal. He was, He is, He will be. Me in essence, I am eternal. I was, I am, I will be. My only aim is to always be aware of this association, that I am in eternal companionship with the divine. In whatever state I may be, whatever may be my condition, whatever may be my state of life, I am always in essence in eternal relationship with the divine. This very idea is negating the idea of the ego. This I am, this body-mind complex. You are negating that. You are trying to get rid of the ego. Your ego is getting sublimated. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna, for a devotee, the case is different. Why? You're hammering out the hub of the will with your devotion, with that idea that I am, God is, and that our relationship is eternal. All these phases of life are just a passing phase. It has nothing to do with the real me. So you're constantly hammering the ego with the idea that you are the divine, and that divinity is linked with the Paramatma, with the Supreme Soul. So this helps you to get rid of the hub, where all the wills, all the tendencies, good and bad, they start falling off, because the hub is taken out. It has been sublimated. And that's the idea when Sri Ramakrishna is saying that for a devotee, the one who has started his spiritual journey is by having an idea of this divine, and to be in eternal relationship with the divine is the be-all and end-all of his endeavor. For such a person, what's no longer the good and the wicked, the tendencies, they start falling off, because the ego, all the wicked tendencies, as we were saying, originates from the ego. Now when this ego is being sublimated, and naturally that those evil tendencies which are with me maybe for ages together, they all fall off in one go. For a person who is, suppose, having some addiction, with lot of effort he may get rid of that addiction, but other desires are they're still there to keep his identity intact, limited identity intact. But here what happens when you're a devotee of God, in a flash, everything is gone. The moment you can really develop that devotion, where your ego gets sublimated, all the desires fall off all in one go. As Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel, in some other context, very nicely he says that suppose a room was dark for thousands of years, no light entered, and then suddenly one person entered there and struck a matchstick. Will it take another 1,000 years for the room to get lighted up? No, it gets lighted up immediately. So the devotee of God here, Sri Ramakrishna is indicating that the moment you really develop that devotion, where you have linked your real essence with the Paramatma, with God, with the soul of your soul, then this idea of this individuality, this ego, that gets sublimated, that falls off. And then in a flash, it takes you to illumination. All the tendencies, they fall off in one go. So that's the thing, Sri Ramakrishna. But it is different for the devotees of God. When a man merges himself in God, he can no longer retain wicked or sinful tendencies. There is no need for getting rid of them one by one. The moment you can have that, you merge yourself in God, all fall together. There is no question of getting rid of them through your endeavor one by one. Tantric, you have said rightly that he keeps only the knowledge ego. Master. Now Master will be correcting him. What he's saying? Yes, he keeps only the knowledge ego, the devotee ego, the servant ego, the good ego. Just see, very nice. Here comes the samanvaya. That Sri Ramakrishna is, we say this, sarva dharma samanvaya. That there are so many ways of getting rid of the ego. That aham brahmasmi, the jnana, that I am one with that absolute. That's the way by which you can obliterate the ego. I am the devotee of God. The same thing. I am, God is, we are eternally related. This ego is an illusion. That's the devotee's ego. The servant ego is also a type of devotion. God is, I am the eternal servant of Him. When you have devotion, the devotion can find expression in the 5 different ways. Dasya, Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, Madhur. All these various attitudes. But they all ultimately speaks of my relation to the divine. So the servant ego and this is good ego. This good ego is what? Whenever I'm not thinking just of myself, I'm thinking of others. So nowadays we hear that whenever in any multicultural, any interfaith meet we go, they will, whenever they're speaking of God, they will speak of God and good. Those who don't believe in God, they believe in goodness. What the goodness is? Swami Vivekananda gave the definition of God very nicely. It suits a believer as well as a non-believer. What he says, unselfishness is God. What a nice definition. The moment my ego drops off, I become one with that collective, that the only one unitary existence. With that I become one. In whatever way that ego falls off. The good ego is what? Maybe there is someone who doesn't believe in God, but he believes in the collective goodness. And that speaks of obliteration of his own ego. Even with that, you can go to that stage where all the evil fall off. This idea of this good ego, which even doesn't need the idea of God to be substantiated, has been elaborately described by Swami Vivekananda in his Karma Yoga. If you go through his Karma Yoga, that there is Karma Yoga with the faith in the Bhagavad Gita. We find Karma Yoga, of course, is related to the faith of the divine. That God is, I am just an instrument in His hand. It is He who is working through me. I have just resigned myself to the divine. So I am just the nimitta. That's the idea. That idea also has been spoken of by Swamiji in Karma Yoga. Along with that, we find in the end of the Karma Yoga, the few last chapters, there he is giving the idea of this selfless action, which is emanating from the idea of this collective goodness. Where if someone is not having any faith in the divine, for them also it is possible to go to that highest good by obliterating his ego, by always relating to that collective goodness. So that is the good ego. So all this can help you to get rid of this wicked ego. So his wicked ego disappears. So here we find in a wonderful way, Sri Ramakrishna is doing that synthesis, that as per your temperament, ultimate goal is to get rid of this wicked ego, so that the ego gets sublimated. It becomes much broader, and the moment it gets sublimated, it becomes much broader, and then all the desires which were linked with this wicked ego, they start falling off. And you get rid of all these tendencies in one go. That's the para vairagya. Yoga Shastra, we find 2 types of vairagya have been spoken of. Vairagya and para, supreme renunciation. Renunciation and supreme renunciation. What is renunciation? That we try in our day-to-day life, that some desire has started affecting me badly, consciously I am trying to get rid of it. That is vairagya. What is para vairagya? When I am more and more associating myself with the divine, then I need not have to get rid of the desires one by one. Renunciation becomes spontaneous. They start falling off all at once. That's the supreme renunciation, para vairagya. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna is speaking of. That with the help of this knowledge ego, devotee ego, servant ego, or good ego, I can get rid of that wicked ego. it disappears. So, Tantric, today you have destroyed many of our doubts. And now the Master says a very interesting thing. These are all after all discussions. At last we have to obliterate our ego through some type of spiritual realization. If I am a devotee, I have to have that intense feeling of devotion for the divine. If I am the one who is a jnani, I have to realize my identity with that Atman's identity with the Brahma, the Brihat, the reality which is beyond this limitation of body, mind, senses. That one and only consciousness which is being reflected as the ego in all this individuality. I have got identified with that. So whatever may be this, whether I am a jnani or whether I am a bhakta, so that it actually speaks of a practice which leads me to a certain type of realization. And what's going on now is just mere discussion. With all this discussion, at last, it may give me some intellectual clarification, but the ego is still intact. That's why when the Tantric says, today you have destroyed many of our doubts, immediately Sri Ramakrishna is correcting him by saying what? All doubts disappear when one realizes the self. So that's a very important thing. When you realize the self, then alone all the doubt can disappear. Before that, all this discussion is good if it motivates me to go to that realization through my endeavor, where I can somehow obliterate my ego in whatever temperament suits me. Somehow I have to obliterate that ego, and obliteration of the ego always is associated with that realization. Only when you go to that realization, then only that ego can obliterate. And when you reach there, then only all the doubts can really be cleared. It can vanish. Before that, the doubts cannot vanish, because it's just conceptual knowledge. Just the way, if anyone describes me the taste of mango, but I have not tasted, however discussion may go on, I can never realize the taste of mango. I may think I have understood, but the day I taste the mango, I will understand all my understandings were of no use. They were just froth. Realization alone can get rid of all those froth. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying, that all doubts disappear when one realizes the self. So with this, we stop our discussion today. We'll continue with the remaining part of the conversation again in the next class. So thank you all. Namaskar.